Thank you all for coming. I appreciate this. And we encourage you to go out and enjoy the grounds as well while you're here. It's a little warm. Maybe you can stay in the shade while you're walking down the paths, but it is beautiful. And I'm going to keep the meeting rolling here. We have a packed agenda. So I would like to introduce Roger Sanderson. Roger, come on up. Roger is an icon here, and sadly he has moved to Alabama, so we don't get to see your smiling face as often as we'd like to. So Roger has an illustrious career down at TDG. He worked there for 5.5 years when it was the, hope I got this right, the Dallas Civic Gardening Club?
Garden Center.
Garden Center. Thank you. And he didn't like the name, so he moved to the Herd Museum. So after 5.5 years down at the Dallas Garden Center, thank you, Garden Center, he moved to the Herd Museum for 11 years. And after the Herd Museum, he came back, when he liked the name change, to TDG, Texas Discovery Garden. And he's been there for several years and has since moved on to Alabama. So we miss you greatly and hope you will keep visiting frequently. So Roger's passions are many. He is, of course, well known throughout the area for native plants, and we're going to hear about some of that this afternoon. But he's also a snake guru, and he's worked with the Boy Scouts very frequently. He has also taught many school children down at TDG about the various snakes that are native to this area and how to recognize the venomous ones from the non-venomous ones. Roger is a birder, and he and his wife were selected to be part of the Cornell University search team for the ivory-bill woodpecker. Did you find any?
Nope.
Oh.
But it was fun looking.
They are also, Roger was on the board at the local Prairie and Timbers Audubon Society, past president of the Texas, see if I can pronounce this right, Herpetological Society, thank you. And they are active members of the Dallas Paleontology Society. Roger also has a passion for insects, particularly pollinators. I can see why that goes hand in hand with native plants. And of course, native plants, of which you're going to share some of your vast knowledge with us today. So without further ado, let's give a big warm welcome to Roger Sanderson.
Probably the best perennial that I know of is this, the Hinckley's or Texas Gold Columbine. It's actually native to out in far west Texas, so it takes the heat really, really well. It's evergreen in the Dallas area, and the blooms are spectacular. It does prefer if you mulch it good and fertilize it maybe once or twice a year, but it does really, really well in the Dallas area. Yarrow, this photo doesn't really show the foliage, but the foliage looks like ferns. It's a real ferny leaf thing. So even when it's not in bloom, it has beautiful foliage. And it happens to be the host plant for the butterfly that you see on there, which is the pearl crescent. Michelle Wong took this picture. I just thought it's a really neat native plant that grows in the shade. Dogbane, I took this picture in Moss Park. It typically grows in pretty much full sun, but it does quite well in the shade as well. The green dragon, and the next one, which is the jack in the pulpit, you can see the flower in the center at the bottom. Both of these are very similar plants. They typically grow in wet places though. So, but if a lot of times people have a little wet place in the shade. And this is what the berries look like. I remember we had green dragon growing at the Herd Museum quite prolifically. False nettle. This is really a cool plant. We had it growing in several places at Texas Discovery Gardens. It looks just about like the stinging nettle, except that it doesn't sting. So it's really great. It's a host plant for the red admiral butterflies, and it grows as a weed around our house in Alabama, and I actually prune it like a hedge because it gets probably 4 foot tall by the end of the year. But it's just a greenery, but it does provide food for the red admirals. Wine cups. Now you're probably going, that's not a shade plant. We had one bed at the Herd Museum that was always in dense shade, and someone before me had planted wine cups in there, and they came back every year and did beautifully. I was surprised that it would take shade. Okay, false mint is a really nice native. Unfortunately, it doesn't bloom this beautifully all the time. It's sporadic in the flowering, but when it does bloom, it's really spectacular, and it only grows in shade. Autumn fern is one of the native ferns that does fairly well in the Dallas area. You probably need to amend it a little bit. It probably likes a little more acid than our alkaline soils here. Okay, elephant's foot. The one that I've pictured is one that we had growing at Texas Discovery Gardens, and I've got photos of those little flowers in the shade covered with monarch butterflies. So it does attract pollinators. There's a one that's native to Dallas County that looks a little bit different than this, and there's another species that grows in Texas, but a little further east of here, the tomentosus. But the elephant's foot has really unique foliage. That's why they call it elephant's foot. It lays flat on the ground until it starts blooming, and then it shoots up, as in this picture. Horsetails, in fact, they've gone back and forth in my many years in botany on what to classify horsetails, and I think they finally settled on that it's actually a fern. But it's also sometimes called a scouring rush. It has actual silicone in its cells, and the early settlers would actually use it for scrubbing pans and things. But it's a really neat plant. In this picture, I think this may have been downtown Dallas. A lot of the landscape architects like the structure of it, but they have to create a place that holds water, because it grows really good in really wet places. But it's just a kind of a unique plant. It's like I said, it's a fern, so it doesn't have flowers on it. Joe Pye weed, and I just added this slide right before I did this program. We have it growing at the farm. It gets tall, and when I first saw it, I thought, what is that plant? It's beautiful. Butterflies really loved it, and then after looking at it, I realized it's Joe Pye weed. We grew this at Texas Discovery Gardens and sold it in our plant sale, but the ones that we had, we got our seed from way up north, and it didn't do that well in Dallas. But if you can find a source in the south, like where I am in Alabama, I think it would do extremely well in Dallas. But it does like a little bit moist soil, but it does prefer shade. White Avens, common weed in this area. I remember we always had it as a weed in our gardens in Dallas, but it is fairly attractive, just the foliage on it. Heartleaf hibiscus, this is a native hibiscus out in West Texas, but in West Texas, it grows up under other things. So it really likes a little shade. It's not a full sun hibiscus as most of the hibiscus are. Louisiana iris, again, it can grow in full sun, but it does really well in shade as well. The cardinal flower, these were pictures taken at our place in Alabama. We have it growing all in our little creek that runs by the house, and I was really surprised, though. I was out in Big Bend area at the Chihuahuan Desert Research Institute, CDRI, and if you hike their trails out there, here's cardinal flower growing down where the water comes out. So it grows in the desert or anywhere else as long as it can get some shade and some constant moisture. With irrigation, I think it'll probably do okay here. Turk's cap, without a doubt, this is the most dependable, toughest plant that you can plant. It grows in full sun or full shade, and it's just the opposite of any plant that I've ever seen. Normally, a plant that grows in full sun is dwarfed with much branching that's real compact, and then in the shade they stretch out because they're trying to get to the sun. This plant is just the opposite. If it gets sun, it'll get maybe 4 or 5 foot tall. I've seen it huge. Whereas in the shade, it tends to stay a little bit smaller because it's not getting as much light, I guess. But the butterflies, particularly the big cloudless sulfurs, the big yellow sulfurs, and the hummingbirds go crazy for this plant. Snow square stem, I had not been familiar with this, and actually the master gardeners planted some at Texas Discovery Gardens in the master gardener's garden, and I had never seen it before, and it was really neat. So it obviously does very well here. Wild 4 o'clocks, this is related to the cultivated 4 o'clocks. It doesn't bloom as prolifically as those do, but it does extremely well here. And Pavonia, this is probably comes in second to the Turk's Cap, and it's related to the Turk's Cap because it's in that same mallow family. And again, it grows in sun or shade, but it seems to do very, very well even in shaded areas. I remember I was doing something with butterflies, and Dale Clark said, well, don't tell people this is a butterfly plant, because he said, I don't get many butterflies on the Pavonia. And I said, and so I took his word for it, but then when I saw it growing, it's true, the big butterflies didn't go to it, but the little skippers. If other flowers weren't very prolific, it was covered with skippers. So it's still a good pollinator plant, but the flowers are just beautiful. They're just not as large as many of the hibiscus. Okay, the Gulf Coast penstemon. We grew this at Texas Discovery Gardens, and it's kind of weedy. It actually spreads, and it does extremely well here. So anything that grows really well in Dallas is a pretty good plant to be tough enough to live around here. But it did well for years. Okay, phlox. This is called Louisiana phlox. Only it grows wild in Alabama where I am, and then they just call it blue phlox, but because it's not in Alabama, I guess. But this is a really great shade plant. The creeping phlox, the pink one, is what does better in the sun, and this blue phlox does better in the shade. This is a downy phlox, sometimes called wood phlox. It also does well in shade. And the smooth phlox, we grew some. I had several planted at Texas Discovery Gardens. It has shiny leaves on it. It looks quite a bit different. But to be honest with you, it didn't do as well as some of the other phloxes in the Dallas area. Okay, a lot of people are familiar with obedient plant, but the one that you're familiar with is the fall obedient plant. There's another species, this one, that grows in the spring. It blooms in the spring. This was growing in our wetland area at the Herd Museum, so it extends the obedient plant blooming period. And this is the one you're familiar with, the fall obedient plant. Just gorgeous plants. Again, though, it usually prefers a place that stays fairly moist. Self-heal is a kind of a little woodland perennial. It doesn't bloom for a long period of time, but it requires no effort at all. It just grows. This was some growing at the Herd Museum just out in the woods. Mountain mint, and there's about 3 or 4 different species of mountain mint. And what is really neat, a lot of you are familiar with the monarda or bee balm that attracts all the butterflies and the bees. This is its counterpart that grows in the shade. It will be covered, and it'll be covered with pollinators that you don't normally see. All kinds of weird looking wasps and things will be all over the mountain mint. It's not as showy, but because of that white hairs on the leaves, it really stands out. It's quite striking, and it requires no care at all. It's tough. Pigeonberry. This has always been one of my most favorite native Texas plants. It also sometimes goes by the name of rouge plant, because the little girls back 100 years ago would squish the berries so they get colored on their cheeks. but the birds like to eat the berries. But both they have pink flowers that are pretty showy, and then are followed by these shiny red berries. It is just a really very colorful native plant. Okay, I just picked this. I just happen to have a slide of it, but there are numerous species of wild petunias. They're usually blue. This just happened to be a white variety, but all of the wild petunias grow well in the shade and bloom for a very long period. They just kind of continually, periodically put out flowers all the time. The wild petunia that you're probably familiar with is the really tall one, which is not native, and it gets to be pretty invasive in the Dallas area. Now there's a dwarf one. It's not native, but it stays small and works quite well here. But there are, like I was saying, like 3 or 4 different native species of wild petunia do extremely well here. The lyre-leaf sage, I actually brought it to Alabama and found out it just grows everywhere. There are, if you see the left picture, there is some varieties that have purple foliage, and it's a little more showy than the green one. But the butterflies love it, and it does really well in the shade. The big red sage, this is a really unusual salvia. They thought it was extinct, and they found one little population out in, I think it was central Texas, I can't remember which county, and they harvested the seeds, and it's now much more common in horticulture than it is in the wild. There's still hardly any in the wild, but you can get these plants or seeds for this plant. It gets pretty tall, like 4 foot or so, and this was some we planted at Texas Discovery Gardens, and of course, like all the salvias, the bees and the butterflies love them. The mountain sage is just a gorgeous plant. It grows wild in central Texas. I've got nice pictures of the two-tailed tiger swallowtails nectaring on this thing out in West Texas. Just a really neat plant. It does quite well in the Dallas area. You probably want to give it where it gets some sun. It probably is not going to like it if it's just in shade all the time. Cedar sage, another little native sage that's very floriferous. And again, the hummingbirds and the butterflies love it. The skullcaps, and there's several different species of skullcap. This was a variety that we grew at Texas Discovery Gardens, but there's several other native species, kind of like a salvia, and the butterflies like it. Okay, cardinal catchfly. This is a West Texas species that is very colorful, grows in the shade. We have a different one that grows on our farm in Alabama. They're sometimes called fire pinks out there, but they grow in the shade, and they do need good drainage, which is always a problem in the Dallas area because of our clay soils. But for a landscape, though, you can create a situation where it'll do well here. I don't know if the ones I planted at Texas Discovery Gardens are still there or not. So, okay, starry campion is another silene or catchfly. This one I took a picture of in in Moss Park in North Dallas. I thought because that's where it was in dense shade that's what it needed, but then I have found it all over the Dallas area, but it growing in full sun. So I guess it's pretty adaptive. Cup plant. Now, technically, you might say it's not native to Texas. The native range comes right down all through the northern part of the United States, right down to about Texarkana, all through Oklahoma and Arkansas, right in that area. It reaches right as the Texas edge, okay? But it's such a neat plant. This is one that I took a picture of just a few weeks ago at our farm in Alabama. It gets about 8 foot tall. It's just huge plant, big giant leaves, and the flowers are really striking. It blooms for a very long period of time and seems to be pretty tough. We had some growing in the butterfly garden at Texas Discovery Gardens. I don't know if it's still there or not, but we never had to do anything to it. It just came back every year. Blue-eyed grass. Okay, this is a relative of the iris, but it's very small. It's only about that tall. You'll see it coming up in your lawns sometimes, but if you actually purposely plant them, it can be a real addition to a garden. They don't bloom for a very long period of time. In fact, I guess I was having my car worked on when I was up in McKinney, and there was a vacant lot right next door, and so I saw these things blooming out there. I said, well, when I come to pick up my car, I'm gonna dig a bunch of them up. And a week or so later, when I went to pick up my car, I literally could not find any of them. So they don't bloom for long, and they totally disappear into the ground. You don't even see them anymore. But while they're blooming, they are really striking. Bear's foot is a really interesting plant. I've seen it growing in a few places in Dallas. It's more of a woodland plant. It has very large leaves. That's why it's called bear's foot. These big leaves on it. But finding something with these pretty flowers, kind of like a perennial sunflower, but grows in shade. But again, it does like pretty good moisture. It doesn't like a place that'll dry out. This is a new one that I just added to this program. I found these growing on our farm in the dense woods, and turns out, unlike any other goldenrod I've ever seen, they grow in dense shade in the woods. I looked at the distribution map, and it extends even into East Texas. I don't know how easy it'll be to find some, but it does really well as a native shade plant. Meadow rue. Now, I've seen this growing wild in the woods in Dallas, but I've never seen them bloom like this picture. So somebody had some that they really took good care of, I guess. But the foliage looks a lot like a columbine, and that's what I actually thought. I had a botany friend of mine who said, I found a columbine growing. He comes running over. He couldn't believe it, and then it turns out it was meadow rue. It wasn't columbine. But it's a really attractive plant, though, even when it's not blooming. Wood ferns. These are native ferns. Like my introduction, the first time I was at Texas Discovery Gardens, when it was the Dallas Civic Garden Center, I couldn't find this plant. The only way I could get it for landscapes and things was people about our age that had it growing in their yards. It was one of those plants that got handed from friend to friend, and all the gardening people knew about it, and they had it growing in their garden, but you could not find it in any stores anywhere. Nowadays, they do grow it, and you can get it, but the wood ferns just, they're tough, durable, and they actually spread. I've even seen cases where somebody cut down a tree, and it was growing in shade, and all of a sudden it's getting full sun, and they do pretty well even in a lot of sun. Spiderworts. These are tough plants. They're not there all year round. They kind of, after they bloom, they kind of shrivel up and kind of disappear for a while, but they do really, really well in the Dallas area without any care at all. Yellow crown beard. In fact, I'm going to move to the next slide, which you're familiar with, the frostweed. And the frostweed frostweed is sometimes referred to as white crown beard, and then this is the yellow crown beard. And there's another one that's closely related called wing stem. This yellow crown beard, I took that at our farm, and instead of, it gets tall. It's like maybe 6 to 8 foot tall. They get big, and we have it growing everywhere, and it's so dramatic when it blooms. All that yellow color. We also have its relative, the frostweed, and now I've been surprised. All of our frostweed is blooming now. Whereas in Dallas, it seemed to coincide with the monarch migration in October. We would always, that's when the state fair, we would always have all the monarchs everywhere, usually during the state fair in October, and all the frostweed was timed for it. But the monarchs in Alabama come through much earlier, and maybe that's why they're early, but our frostweed is already starting to bloom now. Oh, and just so you know, that picture in the bottom right, that's why it's called frostweed. If it gets really, really cold and it freezes overnight, the juices in the roots are pulled up, and all the juices freeze into these crystals, and they're really cool looking, awesome ice crystals at the base of them. And I used to think, well, if you missed it, that was it. But every subsequent hard freeze, they continue to produce new crystals each one of those times. And we have it growing everywhere on our farm, so we get a lot of freezes there compared to here. And I'm amazed. It's just beautiful when you see them being formed right at the base of the plants. Violets, we're all familiar with violets, and there's a whole bunch of different species of violets, but the wood violets, the wild violets, don't require any care at all, and they do really well in your garden in the shade. The golden Alexander is a kind of a neat plant. I like it because it's always the last plant in the alphabet. On any book that you open up, it has the zizia is the last thing there. There's actually 2 different species of it, and we used to grow both species at TDG. But it's also a host plant for the black swallowtails, so it's related to fennel and dill. But it grows in shaded areas, preferably fairly moist areas. Okay, a lot of people don't realize that there are grasses that grow in shade, like the inland sea oats. This was a picture I took in the winter with a little frost on it, and then this is kind of what they normally look like. They can become a little weedy even in the Dallas area, but it's not that big a deal to limit where you have them planted, but they're good filler plants for the back of the garden. Okay, annuals, the partridge pea, really great. It's also a host plant for a lot of the different sulfur butterflies. So you get both flowers and the pretty butterflies feeding on it. Okay, baby blue eyes, it's a little native plant, grows kind of like a ground cover in shade. The blue curls, I was disappointed when I found out it was an annual, but it grows all out through central Texas. You'll see it everywhere out there, and it's just a really beautiful plant. But again, you're going to have to make sure that you plant it every year from seed. Camphor weed, this is one that I always assumed was a perennial, but it turns out it's actually an annual. They call it camphor weed because the leaves have that camphor smell to them. But the flowers are really quite beautiful, and it can grow in sun or shade. Okay, scarlet sage is an annual. We always grew some and planted them out for at Texas Discovery Gardens and when I was at the Herd Museum. And they offer all different colors, white, pink, red. So it's easy to grow, and I've planted them there at our farm in Alabama, and they just kind of come up from seed everywhere. Okay, pepper vine, it's actually in the grape family, but it's just has really pretty berries on it. But you have to beware. You want to plant this somewhere where you don't mind something taking something over, because it'll cover a fence in no time. Pipe vines, the pipe vine is the host plant for the pipe vine swallowtails. Those are the big black swallowtails with the shiny blue hind wings on them, and they're distasteful for the birds. But all these other butterflies mimic the pipe vine swallowtails. Even though they don't taste bad, they want to look like the pipe vine swallowtail, which does taste bad. But this grows frequently in the Dallas area, has huge leaves on it. You're familiar with crossvine. This is a variety, Tangerine Beauty, that's available in the nurseries. This is the Texas Clematis. Carolina, you do not want to plant this plant in your garden, okay? It is gorgeous. If you have a place out in the woods somewhere, you want to have something interesting to just grow, but you cannot kill it. It just comes back and takes over the world, but the berries are absolutely beautiful. Coral honeysuckle, great plant, and it doesn't take over. It's a really wonderful plant, good for hummingbirds. There's several milkweeds, climbing milkweeds. The monarchs do feed, the caterpillars do feed on these milk vines. So let's say you don't have any sun to plant any milkweeds, you can plant these vines and feed the monarchs just as well. And there's probably 6 different species of milkweeds. Here's another one, Anglepod, which has a really interesting pod on it, pearl milk vine. We grew this 7-leaf creeper. I guess it's still growing on that fence at TDG, Virginia creeper. And yellow passion flower, people get all excited. Oh, there's going to be a yellow one. Well, the flowers are only, they're a little tiny. But it is a host plant for the fritillary butterflies. Any questions? She was asking about the spice bush. It's actually, it is the host plant for the spice bush swallowtail. That is true, okay? And I got to warn you, just because something is a host plant for a particular butterfly doesn't mean that you'll have that kind of butterfly here unless that butterfly is pretty much already here, okay? A lot of people will plant pawpaw trees thinking they'll have zebra swallowtails. You'll never have a zebra swallowtail because they're not in this area. You would have to introduce the caterpillar to get a population growing here, okay? And the spice bush is that way. The spice bush feeds on several different plants, including the spice bush, but it's pretty rare around here, so you probably won't have any spice bush swallowtails coming to it, okay? It does fairly well here. We had a huge bush of it at the Herd Museum, but right before I left the herd, it just started kind of going down, and I don't know, maybe it's short-lived here. I don't know. We have it growing in Alabama everywhere, so probably one of our dominant butterflies is the spice bush swallowtails. He was wondering a small tree for the front yard that will grow in shade. There's several pretty good ones. The rough-leaf dogwood, Cornus drummondii, is a really great plant. It doesn't get too big. The leaves will have a nice purple color in the fall. It has white berries, so it's really kind of a neat plant. If you have good moisture, even better might be a elderberry. Some of the pictures in there, we had an elderberry here in Dallas, right on our patio. It likes a place that stays pretty moist, but if it gets good sun, it gets covered with the flowers are this big around. In fact, every year I make elderberry fritters. I like to do that with my grandkids. You mix up a special batter, and they can you cut the flower off. It has its own little stem, so you don't have to worry about them getting hit with the hot grease. They can dip it in the batter and dip it in the grease, the hot grease, and it goldens up real nice, and it basically has no special flavor other than whatever the batter was, but still it's just so cool to go out and you have to pick them early in the morning and then let the kids make them. I used to do a program every year at Texas Discovery Gardens on edible wild plants, and that was something that we always did, was the elderberry fritters. She's wondering if she's going to replace some boxwoods that are in the front of her house, and she wants some that stays neat. I tell people, because I had my own landscape company here for 20-something years, and you never plant boxwoods in the Dallas area. Not that they won't grow, they'll grow. That's the problem. They grow so fast that you're having to prune them all the time. And then if you get a severe cold spell, a lot of them will turn yellow on you, okay? Use dwarf yaupon. It grows slower, which is actually a good thing because then you don't have to prune it all the time, okay? It's evergreen leaves, and you can, prune it into a hedge or mount it up as separate little mounds. Dwarf yaupon, now the dwarf ones don't have the berries like the tall yaupons do. Although I think I've actually seen, maybe they're developing some dwarf ones with berries, I don't know. But the dwarf yaupon is probably the best shrub for it's just tough, durable, no maintenance, it grows slow so you don't have to be pruning it all the time, takes the cold or drought, whatever. So
and
that.
then a couple perennials, like maybe in front of it?
Yes, or mixed in around it, or
Do you have a couple?
like I mentioned, the columbine, the Hinckley's or Texas Gold columbine works really well. You do have to, with the columbine, you do need to like mulch it maybe once a year and give it a little fertilizer, a little extra care. But it's tough. That whole list of all the perennials that I went through, you could mix in with it.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't we? Okay, let's give Roger another round of applause here. That was amazing.
Thank you.
All right, next, I would like to introduce Sharon Reinschmidt. So Sharon is the volunteer coordinator here at the Arboretum, and she's going to talk about volunteer opportunities.
I've been at the Arboretum for about 3 years now. I came on a whim, and I fell in love with the Arboretum. I didn't mean to, but I did, and I'm still here. So I want to share my enthusiasm about the Arboretum with you, what we do as volunteers, what you may want to do as a volunteer if you come join us. When I started here, people said, do they know you're here because you don't grow things very well? And then I found out there were people called Master Gardeners, and it's like, oh my gosh, I was afraid to talk to anybody with a Master Gardener badge because I just like, anyway. So we have a lot of opportunities for you where you can, what was that called? Your public knowledge sharing, that you can get credit for that. On the right spot. And there were more listed that Nancy Nance helped me out with. So one of the things we really like is garden guides. You can pick your time that you want to come and volunteer. It's not a set time. We do ask that you take an hour or so of training just so that you know our garden. You already know about all the flowers and plants and all that stuff, but just so that you kind of know our garden. And then you are just out amongst the public. They'll have lots of questions. You'll have a little badge on that says, ask me. Trust me, I never wear that badge, ever, ever. So I just go out there incognito. But anyway, as a master gardener, you would be such a great resource for our garden. I would love to have you join us. You could also do a Tasteful Place, which is right out here. It's where we use different fruits, vegetables, different edible things from our garden. They come, they make different recipes every week. The chef makes different things, and then you can buy those things in the, I don't know where we sell them, I guess in the restaurant right there. We also have, if you want to come be a guest speaker at some of our DABS things, Nancy Nance is always looking for somebody on Fridays, huh? And then also working in our greenhouse. We'd love to have you for that. I found out that in Colorado, in Denver, their botanical garden, they have over 100 volunteers that just work in their horticulture department. I know that's not something you get your credit for, but I would still love to have you there. I'm very jealous of all the master gardeners they have there in Colorado. So it's like, we're Texans, we should be able to do it better. So that's your invitation. If you want to become the next step for registering, you'll just go online. You'll click, it says donate and volunteer. Don't think that you have to donate something to volunteer. I'm going to take your time. So come and volunteer with us. We will get you set up to do an orientation whenever you want to do an orientation. For regular population, we have set dates for our orientation, but for master gardeners who I just love having here, we'll do an orientation whenever you want. We'll do a one-on-one, we'll do Saturday, Sunday, whatever works best for you. It's about an hour long, After that, we'll have you do a background check. I'll pay for your background check, so that's $11 that you get to save. And I will pay for the background check. Once that comes through, we'll show you how to sign up for any of the things that you can get credit for your public knowledge. Or you can come and do horticulture, which we have just reopened. That's every Tuesday and Thursday from 7 to 11. You come in, you sign up. You can sign up at home. You come in, you call on the radio, where do they need you? They'll tell you where they are, and you can work in whichever garden it is. Being that we are one of the top 10 show gardens in the United States, I don't know, I'd like it on my resume if I was a master gardener, that I was, I helped plant that over there and this over here. It'd be, I don't know, I think it's cool. We have over 1 million visitors that come in. They're always asking the horticulture people questions. They just do. And they don't even wear the Ask Me button, so they ask all kinds of people. But we will get your application process quickly. If when you do your application, if you'll put on there, the page is going to look like this with the Jeed up there. Jeed seems to be in every picture. I don't know why, but she is. This was from Tour de Fleur, where we have a marathon that runs along the outside of the garden. That's lots of fun. But anyway, if you will put on, when you're filling it out and it says which organization, write Master Gardener. That way it signals me to make sure I get back to you right away and say, when's a good time for you to do an orientation so I can get you through and get you out here to the public. And we'll show you how to use Volgistics. That's the program that we use. So you can sign up at any time you want that works for you. Your schedule becomes my schedule. We'd just love to have you. Do y'all have any questions? Okay, don't ask me about plants. Thank you.
I wish that there were no other items on the agenda. Let's see if I can go forward one. Because I'd really like to stand up here the whole rest of the time and talk about this person's achievement. Today, our recipient of the Making a Difference Award is Kimberly High. Kim is a relatively new master gardener. She was in the class of 2023, but she is not, oh yay, shout out to the class of 23. She is not new to gardening. She is the owner, founder, and mastermind behind the creation of Joppy Mama's Farm. Kim has rolled gardening and community advocacy into an absolute superpower. The farm is named after Kim's grandmother, and since its launch in 2021 has grown over 10,000 pounds of produce and hosted hundreds of volunteers from every age group. The farm is located in the historic area of Joppa, which is just south of downtown Dallas. It's within the city limits now, but Joppa was founded in 1872 by Henry Hines, not Harry Hines. And Henry was an emancipated slave, and it's one of the last freedmen towns in Texas. This southeast Dallas neighborhood is isolated from the rest of the city, both physically and by opportunity. It has been designated by the U.S. Department of Agriculture as a food desert. Those living in Joppa's zip code are the third most vulnerable to chronic disease in Dallas County. So clearly understanding the relationship between diet and disease, Kim saw an abandoned lot as an opportunity to bring fresh produce to a community where she was raised and to help combat generations of the chronic diseases that have plagued neighborhood residents for years. Today, the mission statement of Joppy Mama's Farm states that it is to provide education, resources, job training, and safe spaces for women, children, and families, while aiming to empower individual development while providing affordable, healthy food options to underserved communities. Unquestionably, their mission is being realized. Kim is a media star. She's appeared in the Dallas Morning News, in D Magazine. She's also been on CBS News Texas, and in an X post, that's formerly known as Twitter, by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, all promoting urban farming, very specifically Joppy Mama's Farm. A master of accessing community resources, she has also partnered with other nonprofits and urban farms for growth and to share produce. The farm hosts volunteer days, Eagle Scout projects, and has recently sponsored a neighborhood diabetes walk to raise both money and awareness about this chronic disease related to diet. It is also, good news, an approved Master Gardener volunteer opportunity. So if you work at Joppy Mama's Farm, you get volunteer hours. Kim's classmates in the class of 23 described her as a serious, totally focused student, but an absolute natural in the garden. They say she truly represents what Master Gardeners should do to serve and educate our communities. Congratulations, Kim, and please come up and let us recognize you. Okay, this is a pin for your hat, and here's you. And turn it around. I think Sue's going to get a picture. Great job.
Good afternoon. So, the state fair is coming, just like it does every year, like clockwork, ever since I've been born and long before. But this year, we are going to be doing a Master Gardener table inside Texas Discovery Gardens. I know we did this for years. I volunteered there a few years, but we haven't done it for a while. So we're going to start doing it again this year. And we're really excited about it because we've got some big plans. We're going to have some good exhibits for it. So it gives gives us something to talk about, something to educate the public on. So we're just really excited about the opportunity. It's going to be the whole length of the fair every day. It's a lot. From the 27th of September, which is a Friday, through Sunday, October the 20th. So a few of the details, there are 96 slots, and there's 2 shifts, an afternoon shift, a morning shift, and an afternoon shift. Now, I sent out an email 2 or 3 days ago, and y'all have been great. There's been great response to it. So a lot of the slots are filled up, which is really wonderful. I will say that most of the slots that are filled up are morning slots, so afternoon seems to be a little bit less desirable, which I understand. However, I will promise you it's not going to be 104 degrees in October, so it'll be okay. So the good news, it's out in the gardens, there'll be a breeze, I promise. There'll be a breeze, and it's under the shade, it's under that portico, so if it happens to sprinkle or something, you're protected. If it really starts to rain or something, we got someplace to go quickly, so it'll be really fun. I just think it's going to be a fun occasion. It will include parking passes and entry to the fair, so nothing out of pocket. If you want to stay after your shift or come before your shift, whatever, you can do that on that day. And it's just a lot of good knowledge that we have to share with the visitors to the state fair. So that's what we want to do, okay? Just a little added note, so we're still getting together some of those exhibits and some of the things we want to do with kids. So if anybody has ideas or times or wants to help me with that, I would love to talk to you. So see me after the meeting, okay? Or call me or whatever. Get with me, because I would love to get anybody's help with doing that. And if you don't want to come down and do the fair, that's another way that you can help. Is that big enough? There's the QR code if you want a slot. Like I said, the email went out last week, so if you didn't see it, go back and search your emails because it's out there. It's 96 slots. We're gonna need lots of people, so lots and lots of help. So please, 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 we'd love to have everybody come down and do that. Now, I do want to say that that's not the only opportunities you have for the state fair. So Texas Discovery Gardens, as they always do, they use lots of volunteers down there. They manage that. It's separate from what we're doing. I mean, we're working with them to do it, but they will have their own volunteer staff, and they do a little bit of everything. I mean, there's people out helping with the train and helping with the snake garden, or the snakes, not the snake garden. We don't grow snakes, do we? With the snakes and with all kind of things. But there are some of those things that you can get your volunteer hours. And in fact, I think they're all PKS hours. So you can also volunteer for that. That is through Texas Discovery Gardens. So don't get confused. Master Gardener table, we're kind of managing that. That's that QR code or through that email. There's a link you can click. It will be on the website. I don't actually have it on the website, our website yet, but I will. Cynthia and they will help me do that. So you need to go through them to volunteer for that, okay? But lots of good opportunities, and these things would earn volunteer hours too, PKS volunteer hours, okay? And then last but not least, is Crystal here today? So AgriLife, Texas A&M AgriLife Extension has a booth in, I think it's the Tower building. They had it at least last year. I'm not sure, maybe they've had it every year for a long time, but I went by there last year. And so it also needs volunteers, okay? That is inside, you're actually in a booth inside a building. So there'll be information going out about that, but if you want to know something now, see Crystal, okay? She'll hang around for a little bit afterwards, okay? Okay, any questions?
Thank you, Debbie. Okay, let's give another shout out to Kim. We all aspire to be like you. Thank you for all you do. We're proud to have you as a member of the association. All right, we are picking back up with Taste of the Gardens. Janet Lane has been doing an amazing job organizing these events. We have two coming up in September. The first will be at the Texas Discovery Garden, Master Gardener's Garden, and that is to spiff it up so that it'll be, it's always gorgeous, but it'll be extra gorgeous for the state fair. And then that is on September 18th on a Wednesday. And then September 27th on a Friday, there will be a Taste of the Garden event out at Raincatchers, and that will be to propagate plants for the plant sale the following year. So here to talk about Taste of the Gardens is Janet Lane, who has done a fabulous job organizing these events.
Thank you, Monica. I've been gone for 7 months. I'm not going to stand behind the podium because you can't see me. I've been gone for 7 months because I had double knee replacement surgery, and my surgeon said, oh, you'll be taller. So I went from 4'11" to 4'11 and a half. And I knew I was going to come back in April. I had one in February, one in April, and I knew I was going to come back for Taste of the Gardens. And in April, I wrote 9 people. I was on hydrocodone and said, I'm dizzy, I'm loopy, I can't think straight, I feel guilty, I feel so bad, I'm going to have to go inactive. And it was just the saddest email. And then I came back at the end of July, and Monica said, great. And she said, let's get it on the calendar. And then someone else called and said, can you do this job? And then someone else said, can you do this job? And they threw me into it, and now I'm in a pickle. And so I would like to ask if anybody is interested in coming in and taking over Taste of the Gardens. A big job I'm going to be taking over. I am going to have a mentor for the next year working alongside with me. Likewise, I will be a mentor for the next person. And this is something that Monica and I talked about and developed together, and it's been such a fun project. It was meant for master gardeners to learn more about our organization, to have the opportunity to visit each project that we have. We have now 13 projects. Some of them have sub-projects, but we've had so much fun when we go out to them. When King Charles got coronated, I actually brought out fine china, and we had tea and scones, and we've just done some fun things, and I wanted it to be an opportunity for us to get to know what our organization is about more, for us to develop some friendships, because some people would say they'd go out to a project and they'd show up and maybe people are out in the garden and they didn't really feel like they knew what to do or felt welcome. And this is a set way for us to go out as a group and be guided by the leads of the projects. and really learn about that project and maybe feel like you have a home or just discover more about what we do. And I have learned so much about the organization. And I've been a Master Gardener 5 years, and I still feel like I want to find my tribe. Here some people say they found their tribe. And when I walked in today, I felt like I saw so many people that I know, and it felt really good. So it has helped me connect with people more, and I think it's so important in today's world. I talked with Monica when I wanted to do this. I said, after COVID, so many people still felt isolated, and I think we still feel that way. So if it's on your heart to maybe do something like that, it's really a fun project, and I'll be there by your side to help guide you. I've kind of set it up where there's a formula to it. And I think you'd love it, and you'd meet a lot of people. You'd learn about our projects, organizations, our great team leaders, and the volunteers that are there. So please let me know if you'd be interested. And I had great sidekicks, Linda Rao and Cindy Large, and everybody was helping me. So please let me know if you'd be interested. And we'd like this. Monica would like this project to go on, and other people, so I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Janet, for organizing all these events. They've been amazing. Okay, Crystal, come on up. So we are so fortunate to have Crystal supporting us. So Crystal is the new volunteer coordinator. It's now been, what, about 6 months? Not 4 months? 4 months, okay.
Said the same thing.
So Crystal is an AgriLife employee, and county and AgriLife. And there's also, she is the coordinator now for all the volunteers, so you can put a face to a name here. And Crystal is going to introduce the new hire out at RB1.
As Ms. Monica said, I'm Crystal Oduwale. I'm the volunteer coordinator. But we hired a new urban farm coordinator for RB1. We don't quite yet have a horticulture agent. Xiomara, Ms. Diaz, the director, she wants to make sure that the person hired and comes on, that they are aligned with the mission that you all have already set, and can kind of sit back and see what you all are doing and not just jump in and try to take over, because you all have done a lot of great work and are continuing to do that. So the new urban farm coordinator is Mr. Jerry Robinson. If you see him, tell him hello. It's over there.
To the Master Gardeners out at RB1, y'all have been doing an amazing job already. I'm there to support anything you all need. Any of you all want to come out and volunteer, or you need me to come out and take a look, I'm willing to come out and take a look there as well. So just, if you haven't been out to RB1, give us about another 6 months, and you're going to see some really amazing things. All right, thank you.
The results of the 2024 State Fair submissions are in, and there were 70 entries from Master Gardeners and 36 ribbons. All right, so if you receive, let's just do both. If you entered anything into the State Fair competition, please stand and be recognized. Woohoo! And if you want a ribbon, remain standing. Y'all make us proud. Thank you. Next meeting is September 28th on a Saturday, so note the date difference. And that will be over at CC Young. And now on to the raffle. So here are the plants from TDG for today's raffle. And I would like to note that we threw in a 7th plant there, and it's one of Roger's favorites. It's pigeonberry, so it's in the cart. All right, that concludes today's meeting. Roger will stick around for questions. Debbie will stick around for questions, and we'll see you next Saturday at CC Young. Thank you.